This is the Status Update Interview Series, episode number 1. Our guest today is Scott Westerman, the Executive Director of the Michigan State University Alumni Association. This interview was recorded on Friday, February 24th, 2012. Welcome to the Status Update Interview Series. This is our latest video and audio offering in which we will sit down and discuss a little bit of social media with someone in the industry, or at least someone who is using social media for a particular organization or particular purpose. So each week we're going to kind of bring you a different interview, a different spin on how people are using social media in their personal lives and as well as in their organization. Today, our guest is Scott Westerman, the Executive Director of the Michigan State Alumni Association. Scott, how you doing?
Good morning.
And it's a snowy morning here in East Lansing, so hopefully everything's good. You know, you didn't have to get up and shovel the walk or anything.
Actually, it's not as bad now as I thought it was going to be.
Oh, that's good.
I could actually get out of the driveway, but it's great to be able to have this technology so I can work out of the house.
Exactly, yeah. Very nice. So, yeah, thank you for joining us. And real quick, I know that as a student, and as you know, being around other students and whatnot, we kind of all know there's an alumni association, but I don't think a lot of us know what exactly it does, what exactly the purpose is, you know, what the benefits are of it. So if you can real briefly explain what exactly is the Alumni Association, what are your missions, what are your goals, what are you trying to do?
Well, if you look at the timeline of your Spartan life, you know, you spend the first 4 to 6 years or 8 years if you're getting a PhD connected with Michigan State University in an academic sense. On the side are the things that you do that really become the memories that you make for a lifetime at Michigan State, the friends you meet, the extracurricular activities you take part in. And then comes this thing called graduation, and you jump out into the real world, and that's where MSU Alumni Association takes over. President Simon gets you for this short period of time that you're on campus. We get you for the rest of your life. Our trademark is your personal network for life. And what our mission is that we get you from wherever you are today to wherever you want to be tomorrow. The way we do that is that we have a network out there of over 500,000 Spartans anywhere in the world that are willing to take your phone call, whether or not they've ever met you before, just because you are a Spartan. And what Michigan State Alumni Association does is we provide that connection. We're the central connection point, the Twitter or the Facebook, if you will, that brings all of that Spartan nation together for the benefit of everybody.
Okay, so how has social media, or how do you use social media with that? I mean, obviously, social media does great wonders in terms of connecting people and networking people. So how have you guys kind of harnessed that power and utilized it to achieve that goal?
Well, we look at social media as just another one of the tools that we can use to interconnect with people out there. Of course, the ultimate social network, the ultimate social medium is face-to-face contact. And everything that we do at the Alumni Association, I think everything we do in life, ultimately leads to that point where we can look one another in the eye, stand side by side, and take advantage of all of that data that's coming in through all of our senses to understand one another and to move forward together in the direction of a happier life. And so if you think about the way that we have done things in the past, the old school way of communicating, from snail mail to landlines. In our case, one of our most popular communication tools is our magazine, the MSU Alumni Magazine. Those all appeal to a certain demographic and a certain market, certain segment of our community that we serve. Increasingly, what we're finding is that people want to engage with us on the social networks. The key to our success at the Alumni Association is that we want to engage with you in the way that you want us to talk to you and over the network that you want us to talk to you. So that means that we're active all over the web. We have a Facebook presence. We have a Twitter handle, an official Twitter handle for the MSU Alumni Association. We're on Google+. Just about everywhere that there is a technological outpost, there's an MSUAA connection. Beyond that, we encourage members of our team to exhibit their own voice, their own personalities on social media. So what happens is that you identify with not just the association, but the personalities that are connected to it. For example, my Twitter handle, MSU Scott W., that has a completely different vibe than Tim Bograkis, who is our young alumni guy. And we encourage that because that's part of the magic of the Spartan Nation is its diversity. So we try and take advantage of all the different kinds of Spartans there are out there to help us enlighten one another on whatever networks you may be involved with.
You mentioned Google Plus in there, and I know that you are personally on Google Plus, and you mentioned the Alumni Association on Google Plus. I'm kind of curious what your take is on it. To me, it's looked like it's garnered a lot of attention. A lot of people have joined, but I'm not sure that a lot of people are very active on it. What have you guys found with interactions on Google Plus?
Well, Google Plus's challenge has always been that they have not opened their API up enough to make it usable on the different tools that we all like to use. For example, the main social media tool that I use every day is Hootsuite, because it allows me to post on LinkedIn, Facebook, our various Twitter identities, and even on, I'm also involved on another Twitter clone called Identica, which is an open source version of Twitter that has more of an international audience. All of those things can be accessed through tools like Hootsuite and TweetDeck, but so far Google Plus can't. So it's one more step that you have to take. For me to post, for example, I do probably half a dozen tweets that I send out every morning at 5 a.m. It's very easy for me to purpose those tweets across Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. But I have to take an extra step with Google Plus, and that's actually opening up the Google Plus app on the iPhone, cutting and pasting into that app. So that's that extra minute that those of us from the ADD generation don't want to take time with. So for now, Google Plus has had, I think, a more limited audience because of that. Over time, I think it can be a significant challenge to Facebook for a number of reasons. Probably the two biggest are your easy ability to be able to target your content to what they call circles, the various interest groups that you can set up. And the second thing is that Google has a much longer history in the world than Facebook does. And as a result of that, they've negotiated a little bit more effectively some of these privacy issues that Facebook has struggled with. And it has alienated some people that are heavy-duty Facebook users. So I think you can't really count Google Plus out of the picture yet. And over time, from what I know about the folks at Google, they will adjust the application to make it as easy to use as possible.
I'm curious. You brought up the kind of the privacy thing with Google, and we've talked about this on Status Update quite a bit. They've had a lot of privacy things come up in the last couple of weeks. The big privacy policy change at Google across all of the platforms. Just last week, it was released. They were using this workaround within Safari to basically use cookies, which isn't abnormal. I mean, pretty much everybody does it, but it was, people were saying, well, you were using the workaround. What do you make out of Google and all these kind of privacy issues that have come up lately? I think the point that we kind of made on the show was Google's always kind of been the organization that people always felt like they trusted. And, whereas Facebook, everyone kind of has always, not trusted Facebook. There's always been this kind of this worry with Facebook. But Google, everyone's kind of always trusted Google. But it almost seems like that's changing a little bit.
Well, I mean, the reality is that your data is not safe on the internet. There is nothing that is confidential. So whatever you post, whatever information you share, it's like you're standing on the top of your house or in the middle of Spartan Stadium with the PA on and announcing it to the world. There are ways that you can lock down your data, your information, so that you're not sharing it as often. The challenge is that a lot of these social networks make it very easy to disseminate that stuff because they say, for example, would you like to connect to X using your Facebook credentials? When you click that, what that basically does is it allows the X company or the X application to grab everything that you've shared in terms of your information off of Facebook. So, I mean, that isn't surprising. And I'm not sure that it's necessarily wrong. I mean, these companies, if you're willing to share your information with them and you don't take the time to read their privacy policy, you can't be upset with the way they use it. What I always encourage people to do is to read it. It's a long legal document, and it can be a little bit frightening because what you do realize once you take a look at it is that you are exposing a lot of your identity out there for everybody to see. So, I think the privacy thing is a huge issue, but it's like healthcare. In the end of the day, we're responsible for the quality of our healthcare. It isn't, doctors give us opinions, and we can either take those opinions or we can get a second opinion. And same goes with our personal information. We get to decide what we want to share and what we don't want to share. Once you throw it out there, though, it's like a mail address. There will be spam in your mailbox as soon as somebody knows where you live.
Exactly. Yep. I just want to get back to the Alumni Association and social media. I mean, each social network has kind of their different use, their different application. And I think businesses are starting to figure this out. You know, what you post on Facebook, you can't necessarily post on Twitter, not only because you're limited to 140 characters, but there's a different response to it. There's a different feeling on it. What have you guys found with what social network maybe makes the best connections or works best for you? I have to imagine LinkedIn is a really big part of what you guys do there. So if you can speak a little bit to how do you harness different social medias differently?
Well, the place to begin is in strategy. You have to decide what kind of social media strategy you want to have, and there are basically.
Nope, I lost your audio.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there we go.
Press the wrong. There's basically 3 social media strategies out there that we talk about at MSUAA. And one is broadcasting, which is the old PR model where you write a press release and have a message and you send it out, and you don't expect anybody to comment on it or interact with you on it. The second is what we call the interactors, which is what you use for customer service. And that's basically reactive. Somebody says something about your company, you respond to it, they have a problem, you fix it, that's the end of the relationship. What we use at MSUAA is the third approach, which is the engagement approach. And that is we want to understand as much as we can about you so that we can serve you more effectively. So that works differently on different social networks. When I'm teaching people how to write for social media, I take them back to the Journalism 101 concept of the inverted pyramid. The inverted pyramid, is what you use when you're writing for a newspaper, is you get everything out in that first sentence that they absolutely need to know. And that's what goes on Twitter, which you use in 140 characters with your contractions, with your bit.ly link shorteners, and with the ampersand and the pound sign. You try and get as much of the most important parts of your message out on that network. You have a little bit more room on Facebook, but you don't have a lot more because there's that more button that people have to press to go down below the fold to get your message under your message. So you got roughly 270 characters to do that. And then there's the longer space, which is the blog posts and that kind of stuff. So you need to integrate all of those things. I think that the goal with social media is to get people to want to know more about what you're talking about. So if you're posting on Twitter, that audience is looking at that network as almost a newswire. It's kind of like the Associated Press of the new generation. They go there to figure out what are the headlines that are happening, and if they want to know more, they'll dive in to get those. So as we're talking to our people in that tweet stream world, we know that they've got a very short attention span, and we got to try and communicate with them effectively there. The great, interesting piece of data about Twitter is that very few people actually click through the stuff they see. So they'll make their judgments based on that one sentence. Very similar to what's going on television news right now with the soundbite mentality. It's very easy to say that there's a significant problem and to put it in a shocking term in a sentence or two. But once you dig into most of these things, you find out that the issue is a lot more complicated below the surface. So as we're thinking about Twitter, we really are trying to get people's attention and make sure we give our message as quickly as possible. Facebook, different situation. That's more like a friends and family ecosystem. So as we're talking to people there, we realize that those folks are going to want to tell us more about what's going on in their personal life, so we get a little bit more personal about what's happening with us there. And then as we look at our blog, alumni.msu.edu, that's where we've got the opportunity to really go into detail, to provide a lot of resources, both visual and textual. That's where we have links to our MS YouTube channel, where all our video is, and where we put links to the Spartan podcast, where we have the audio stuff. So as we look across this portfolio of media that we have to be able to communicate with folks, each one has its own unique audience that behaves in its own unique way, and the better we can understand who they are and how they behave, the better we'll be able to communicate with them.
You obviously personally are very active on social media. People can follow you on Twitter, MSU Scott W. And it seems that a lot of what your job would be is interacting with people, talking with people, connecting, networking, the like. And so how, I guess, how has social media changed how you do that? And one of the examples that I can think of right off the top of my head is that I've actually never met you face to face, but we have had several interactions on social media, on Twitter, and obviously here we are on Skype right now. So it kind of, previously that would not have been able to happen. So how has that changed kind of how you connect and network with people, but for your job?
Well, it's interesting because this goes back for me to the 1960s when I first became interested in amateur radio. The ham radio community is basically a network, and there are a lot of people that I know as radio amateurs that I've never met face to face. The only communication I've had with them is over the air. And what has happened over time is that there have been other ways to do that. Early on, there were networks like Genie and Prodigy and the original AOL, which were kind of closed walled garden networks. And then as things opened up more with slip connections and that kind of stuff, you saw the dawn of Internet Relay Chat, which was the first instant messenger thing, and it allowed for you to have direct communication by a text, or you could have a group chat thing, and everything is evolved from there. So while the number of ways that we have to communicate have expanded greatly, and it's opened up a much broader audience for us to be able to talk with, the communication style is still the same. You still have a personality. You still have a personal brand. And whether or not we like to admit it, we're always expressing our personal brand with everything we say and do. So it comes down to how effective can you be in expressing that personal brand in a way that's going to make others want to pay attention.
You were previously at Comcast Cable in Arizona, New Mexico, and so I'm curious. Comcast, back a while back, had actually a bad reputation for customer service, but really, as of lately, they have turned that around, very well. And you read in a lot of these social media books about their social media work and how that's really been a big part of that, and how they've used, harnessed social media for customer relations and whatnot. So, how have you, what do you see as the differences between using social media or marketing in general for a for-profit business versus kind of a nonprofit organization at like the Alumni Association now?
Well, the biggest challenge that a company like Comcast has is their scale. They have 28 million subscribers. So even if you have a 1% failure rate, that's 280,000 people at any given time that are really, really upset with you. And if 10% of those go far enough as to speak about it in public in a public forum like Twitter, on any given day, that's 28,000 people that might be tweeting. So the thought process for us behind the Comcast social media interaction strategy was, how do we identify who's saying these things that they need help with from Comcast, and how do we quickly and effectively assist them? And that again is nothing more than a customer service call center on steroids. The great thing about the Comcast social media activity is that it allowed us to very quickly zero in on both geographic areas where issues were, and also identify root causes, the root causes of what's really causing the problems. So the quicker, if you're in any kind of business, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, you can understand where it hurts and put resources there to remove that hurt, the better you are going to be able to serve customers. I think the thing that stuns a lot of people just in general about social media is how easy it is to quickly respond. And that's what surprised everybody that we interacted with on Twitter and in the blogosphere, was that there were actually Comcast people that were trolling all that stuff and would jump right in. And when you're used to having to wait a long time to talk to somebody on the phone, or having a very slow response process, and then all of a sudden you shoot a tweet out there and 2 minutes later somebody's saying, "How can I help?" And that has a very visceral impact on your impression of the company. And it helped Comcast significantly improve their customer satisfaction perception. As you look at any of these organizations that are out there, it's something that we can all do better. And that's the most important metric that we look at the Alumni Association. In fact, the only one that we look at every day is our member satisfaction metric. We follow the Net Promoter Score concept that was espoused by a guy by the name of Fred Reichheld. He wrote a book called The Ultimate Question Is, Would You Recommend Us to Somebody Else? And he uses a 1 to 10 scale, 1 to 5 being the people that really don't like you and they're going to say bad things about you. 5 to 7 are the neutrals who won't say anything about you. And then 8 to 10 are your promoters, your fanatics, your fans. So you want to get more people ranking you in that area of 8 to 10 than you had before and try and figure out what it takes to get them there. So what we do at MSUAA is every one of our communications that goes out, every event that we do, everything that we talk about, and every time we have an interaction with you, we ask you to fill out a 10-second survey. There are 3 questions in that survey. The first one is, how did we do with the interaction? Did we solve your problem? Did you enjoy the event, 1 to 10? Second one is the ultimate question. Would you recommend the MSU Alumni Association to others, 1 to 10? And then the third one is an open-ended question, which we call feedback, where you either give us praise or guidance. Tell us what we did right or tell us how we can serve you better. Those things come into us every single day. Every time somebody fills one of those things out, 2 things happen. One is it goes into a database, which calculates dynamically our Net Promoter Score for the day, the week, and the month. And the second thing is every time one of those comes in, it comes to my iPhone. I get it immediately. So I can take a look at it, see if it's something that needs immediate attention. If it is, I'll fire it out. We'll triage it. We'll act on it. If it's something that we just need to know about, we'll take a look at it. What has happened in the time that we started doing this is that the people that are on this instant mailing list have significantly increased. Everybody that has ever had an opportunity to serve an MSU Alumni Association member and who has gotten a negative net promoter feedback wants to be on it so that they can jump on it and fix things. The biggest issue that we have, of course, in most any organization is the most dynamic communication. That's our website. Every time we make a change, that generates some negative feedback. And it's the Net Promoter Score and the 10-second survey has helped us immediately zero in on those issues and fix them. What the end result of this has all been for us is we started tracking Net Promoter Score. We were in the 6s. We were about 6.
Oh, I lost your audio again.
I don't know what's doing that.
There we go. All right. Technology.
As I look at our Net Promoter Score for this morning, for the last 7 days, we're at a perfect 10. For the 30 days, we're at 9.2, and for the year since January 1st, we're at 8.86. And that's, if you're doing well in terms of satisfaction, everything else takes care of itself.
I want to tell you have a blog, scottwesterman.com, and I want to talk about a particular blog post that you posted called "How to Lose Me as a Customer." And basically, you talked about 2 businesses essentially, trying to really hard sell you items that you didn't want. And if you're in marketing, this is what is called like the selling phase, where basically a business just sells what they have. It doesn't matter if you want it or not; they just try to sell it to you. And I'm kind of curious as to your take on customers kind of using social media to complain about a business and how that whole process works. It's really interesting. You see a lot of people complain on social media and a lot of people get responses. I mean, I've had success from a lot of corporations in getting responses from people pretty quickly when I complain about something, and then others not. But at the same time, I always think that it's very important to, if they get back to you on social media, then give good feedback, about them. Say, yeah, they fixed my problem. Say that so people know it. Kind of curious what you think about how that has worked, because it's kind of blown this whole thing up where everybody is all of a sudden the most powerful person in the world, and they can and a business wants to attend to them immediately.
That's the best thing about the social media revolution, is that it's empowered us as consumers to be able to speak up. The old paradigm is you get bad service at a store, the place you talk about it is at the cocktail party. Now what can happen is that as you're walking out of the store, you can tweet about it. So you have to be very careful as a service provider that you're providing the right kind of service, or else people are going to talk about it. And the other thing is you got to be aware. If people are upset with you, you need to immediately engage to change that, because what can happen is that story can go viral. You see those every single day of things, something that's happened that, the most recent thing that I saw this morning is Robert Scoble was supposedly starting a venture capital fund. Turns out that's not what he was doing at all, but a reporter misunderstood what he said. It got viral. Everybody's saying, we love Robert Scoble because he's impartial. Certainly he has opinions, but he doesn't have skin in the game. Now he's starting a venture fund. He's going to be pushing his stuff. So there's that kind of information that goes on. And you have to jump in immediately and engage to correct that, or it will be like a snowball and roll downhill very fast. And my biggest pet peeve as I look at businesses, I want people to understand who I am before they ask me if they can sell me something. And a lot of businesses, Comcast was one of them. When I was there, we had a vibe for trying to see if we could maximize the revenue out of every customer that walked through the door. But there's a way to do it. There's a proper way to do it, and that's the good old sales process where you build rapport first. You try to understand what the person's passion is or their need is, and then you present based upon that. And a lot of companies are so focused on just using the bottom lines that they lose those first two steps in the sales process.
I always think about, I'll never forget, this is years ago, but my uncle's on the radio in Toledo, and he mentioned something about his cable provider on the radio, and they immediately called him and said, oh, well, we'll give you X number of months free or whatever. And it's almost like everybody can do that now. I mean, that was, he could do that because he was, on the radio, people listening to him, but now everybody kind of has that power to do that. And another example, just to kind of give you an idea of how how powerful it is, just people out there. I was riding the bus, the Cata bus home, and one of the buses was squeaking like crazy when it turned. And so I tweeted them, and I just said, "Hey, your bus is squeaking. It's number 6004." And they tweeted me back, and they said, "Yeah, we're gonna fix it. We got it in the shop already." So, it's amazing how. And it wasn't, I was kind of complaining, but I wasn't, irate. I was just telling them, by the way, your bus is squeaky. So, I think everybody has the power to do that, and it is quite amazing.
Well, it's definitely, you definitely get more people that are listening to you. But the thing I always think about, it's always in the back of my mind with every blog post I write, every tweet that I send out is a great Edward R. Murrow quote. He said once that you can't think that your insights are any more valuable when you're talking to hundreds of thousands of people across the world than they were when you were just shouting to a few people across the end of the bar. At the end of the day, it's about quality content. You have to have something to say that's worth listening to. And one of the downsides of the proliferation of social media is that anybody can start a blog and anybody can say anything. So there is a lot of noise out there. And the biggest challenge, I think, for us, just as a society, is how do we filter through that noise and figure out where the real value is? And so if you're a content provider, it's always helpful to keep that in mind.
Before I let you go, I have to mention I was sitting down, and this is a couple weeks ago, and I'm watching American Idol on the TV, and I have to, I do watch American Idol, and I see you, and you're in a commercial for the Michigan State Federal Credit Union.
Yeah, I was playing a straight man to Smarty. 15 seconds of fame.
So you did, yeah, you did very well, very well. So I would give you an Oscar if you could be up for an Oscar for that. So.
It's interesting that really. Try and get a handle around how that stuff works. I mean, that really is an old school television commercial for 30 seconds where they're just talking about why you should get a credit card with a Sparty picture or a Sparty picture on the cover. And that has worked incredibly well. When I talk to the folks, our partners at the MSU Federal Credit Union, they've literally generated hundreds of new accounts. They've exceeded their expectations on that whole thing. And it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with that big guy in the green and white, who is probably the most recognizable college mascot, and right up there with Mickey Mouse as one of the most recognizable mascots in the world. So you can't underestimate the power of a really good spokesperson. I'm not that person. I'm just a straight man.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Scott Westerman, Executive Director of the Michigan State Alumni Association. You can find him online, scottwesterman.com, where you can read all of his blog posts, including the Monday Motivator posts, and at MSU Scott W on Twitter. And is there anywhere else you want people to find you?
Those are the places to start.
All right. Good to go. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.